Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation, looking to show the direct iteration of the syllability, that is the letters and the logical implications of sensorality. What is sensorality? Sensorality is spatiality. Spatiality, space is essential. So that's our logical framework. Again, this is part 350 something. So there's a lot of steps you have to catch up with, but that is where we're at logically. Continuing on developing our linguistics, facts and evidence about language to produce a proof. What is the definition of sensorality? I have senses with an S. My microwave does not have senses like me. When I click reheat, it will say sensor, S-E-N-S-O-R. But it does not have senses, S-E-N-S-E-S. So we're showing the logical consistency, the linguistical consistency, by resolving that inconsistency. And so we already know what the form and what is accomplished, the quality of the proof, and we were just working through the linguistics to show that direct iteration. And so continuing on, last episode we had grace, sensorality is graceful, generosity is graceful. Sectioned is dissected, and that is a natural definition. So again, we derived as much of the alphabet as possible. Again, we're just showing this internal consistency. A, if you inverse the A, you get the E. We went through that last time. We can just kind of state another bound, right? The A and the G are bounds. They're also in the numeric elementality slots 1 and 7 in the English alphabet. And so, or I guess 8, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So again, G is in the 8th slot, and again, the number 8, that symbol, is the infinity sign rotated. And so the letter A, the shape A, the letter G, and the letter G are numerical bounds, 1 to 8. And so just re-emphasizing the AE, that symbol throughout history is an iteration of the symbol, the infinity sign. And again, not stating any chronology, not saying the infinity sign came first or the A and the E symbol came first, but just saying, hey, there's geometric relationship here. Because this is at the point of statement of existence. These things just existed and we were all born into a world where these symbols represents these sounds, and that's irreducible. Right? When you learn the alphabet and you're sitting there singing a song A, B, C, D, and cat and dog come up on the screen, and you associate, that word, those sounds to those objects, that's the irreducible aspect. And so additionally, we can just state a couple other obvious things about the shapes of the letters. G specifically, the capital letter G in the Roman alphabet has gamma. Like the G in the Cyrillic alphabet, the G sound in the Greek alphabet, that lower, like when you do an uppercase G, it's a gamma. Like that shape is a gamma 100%. I sent that off over email probably a couple weeks ago at this point, but it's just one of these, again, direct geometric facts. I'm sure you can calculate some numeric proportions. But to me, this strikes me just like the Fibonacci sequence, right? When you have a point and then you draw like that conical shell thing kind of going around, it's universal growth, right? Last time we had a based A, B, A, C, E, D. You have one thing, it has to invert to grow. It differentiates that opposition. That's our fundamental stability of 2. That's our proton and our electron, this fundamental dichotomy to all physical systems. And so the Fibonacci sequence is a growth sequence. Right? What is the motivation? If you have a sequence of numbers 1, 1, 2, 1, or 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, right? You're adding the 2 previous terms. And so why do that? Right? The motivation is growth, expansion. And so the letter G, like literally geometrically, looks like that conical shell type thing when you say the Fibonacci sequence and you have that spiral. I mean, that, like the A and the E, they're all like, again, some sort of spirality, like geometrically. So just some more things we can point out. Sensorality integrates integers. So integer being a word for a number, but the form clearly integrate integer, developing the consistency. Sensorality is gracious. Gracious, spacious. Sensorality is graciosity. Just generalizing gracious. Grateful is thankful. Sensorality is thankful. Sensorality is thankfulness. Senseless is thankless. Sensorality is gratiality. So like why gratiality to graciosity? Again, just direct iteration of the syllability moving along. Sensorality, so that's where I guess, again, that was a chunk. What I just said was previous days. The intro, me talking, was not, but the actual reading of the theorems, and then this was today. So gracious, but what is gratiosity to gratiality? Again, it would just be a natural definition. And so, but gracial, like we generalize grace. So yeah. But I'm just thinking like gracious to grace. You just get a different general word form, but it's the same thing logically. And so, but gratiality produces raciality. Sensorality is racial, right? Species are races. Again, you can't really deny that conversation throughout society. Sensorality is raciality. Raciality is racist. A speciesist is a racist. A sensorist is a generalist. So I wanted to point out that is the natural logic for a little kid. When you have he's a race car driver, he's a racist, right? Everyone's heard that, super common, but it's why. I mean, it's the natural progression, natural growth of logic represented by language. The same thing when little kids say, you're stupid, you're stupider, you're the stupider, or you just keep adding things. But we have this limit, right, where you're the most stupid, right? I wanted to point out that like a generalist, a racist, these words that indicate individuals, a sensorist, again, that's the word form for a scientist, from sensorality, but they end in ship and list, which are complete words, right? So our language is completely generalized, completely bounded, but just something to point out for now. Censorship, generalist. Sensorality is a race car. And so last time we had abased, A-B-A-C-E-D, and now again we have this A-C-E-C-A, again direct, it's a fundamental palindrome. It's the same forward and backward, but again centered on E, the fifth element of the English alphabet, bounded by the first letter A, iterated the third element C, which is that iteration element, but race car is the fundamental palindrome. Sense identifies sensorality. Sense identifies self. And so now, here's this big restatement of the fundamental theorem of physics, and it's true and it's immediately appreciated, but mass is resistance. Not like theoretically, like this stuff resists movement. All of it, all of the time. So what is mass? Mass is resistance. Viscosity is the resistance in parentheses to flow. That's how it's defined, again, presented in slang ontology, but flow is a word for movement, but not just movement, but rhythmic movement, right? If someone's rapping on a beat and they have a good flow, it's rhythmic motion. If they're, again, hitting on a significant other and they're quick with their words or witty, right? They're smooth. And so rhythmic motion is flow, but specifically to our definition, mass is resistance, directly, literally, immediately. That's what force equals mass times acceleration, right? Mass and acceleration, mass is resistance. But you have mass as resistance, viscosity, the resistance to flow. Mass produces viscosity, not gravity. And that is the fundamental theorem of physics. Resistance is resistance. So that's logically all we have said by mass produces viscosity. Mass, this thing that resists stuff, resists movement. We just said resistance is resistance, but with fundamental physical ontological intuition. And it should be over. Mass produces viscosity is nothing more than a literal statement of resistance is resistance. The resistance to flow is resistance. Mass is resistance. Again, I do not have a office to work at, and there's just talking in the background, and I can never focus. I will never be able to do my work. It's disgusting. Sensorality stabilizes identity. Sensorality indemnifies. I said this last time, but we can kind of just re-emphasize it or just put a label on it. But the fundamental theorem of conceptualization, realization is not unique. Individuals are. Just wanted to re-emphasize that. Sensation, conceptualization, I just have that as a dichotomistic pair. So again, anytime you see my derivation and it's just two words, it's like this is just the logical starting point. This concept relates to this concept, and here's the syllability that connects the two. Sensation preserves experience. Sensorality is experientiality. Experience, expertise. Sensorality is expertise. Sensorality is expensive. Expensive, expansive. Direct iteration from the E to the A, and see now we have direct chronological motivation. I didn't pick A as the first letter, I didn't pick E as the fifth letter, but they're clear geometric inverses, and throughout these languages you can see the E and the A directly iterating, and that's like the fundamental dichotomy of language, is the differentiation of vowels, A and E. Spatiality is expansive. Right now we're conceptually within, bounded by sensorality, and we're just finding the stabilizing syllability. Space expands. Spatiality is expansive. Financial, racial. Is finance racist? Again, working up to this self-generated question where it has this syllability, and again, language is literal. What is the theme of mathematics? Mathematics is theme. What is the theme of censorship? Obscenity is the theme of censorship. And so we're just showing this finalizing, stabilizing iteration to solidify the definition of sensorality. It's almost certainly filtration, directly, literally. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We have to show that transition to get our final resolution. So my rights continue to be violated. It is profoundly and extensively illegal. It is hilariously and disgusting and disgraceful to the United States Constitution, to what anybody would call democracy or human rights at any place in this entire world. I have no career, I have no family, I have no ability to eat properly, to sleep properly, and to work. Truly, the concept of me being able to buy food and eat food it's an unrealistic expectation for a slave. I sit here and I work the best I can, and I just get to the next day. That's all my life has ever been. That's all my life will ever be. I have never had rights. And I am surrounded by people so privileged that if, like, the wind blows in the wrong direction, they feel like they've been wronged for 13 eternities, and their whole bloodline has been just cursed for all you can imagine. And I will never live a day of my disgusting existence because people will not tell the truth. I continue to beg for asylum. I continue to beg to get out of this country. There is nothing I can say, do, or no place to go to stop getting abused. I just want my story to be heard at some point, which will be never, and for the people that have done this to me to be prosecuted with no leniency, no forgiveness, no nothing. These people are disgusting, and they've treated me more inhumanely than anybody else that has ever walked on this fucking planet. Human beings can't change, they can't behave, they're too insulated by privilege. They will never acknowledge the disgusting shit that has been done to me. Thank you for watching, see you on the next one.